This is an event that I will never forget. There is absolutely no way I could have mistaken this. Let's get into it. Me and my sister were living in a townhouse together at this time. This was about 3 to 4 years ago. We lived in a small suburban town where everyone knew everyone. My town is filled with forests and cornfields. So when it was nighttime, it was eerie. Here is what happened. It was a Friday evening, and my sister and I were fighting over the phone about something minuscule. We both work together as well, so you can imagine how heated our arguments can get, spending that much time together. During the workday, we are going at it over text, and it has gotten to a bad point where we may need to separate ourselves. As the clock hits 5 p.m., she leaves the office first. We are still texting and fighting over the phone, to point where I was almost in full-blown rage. I take a breather, pack my things, and head off back to the townhouse. I was contemplating going over to my parents' house who live close by, but at that time, I needed to cool down and be by myself. As I am driving, I am completely dreading seeing her there and having to go through yet another argument. I get to the townhouse, I take a deep breath, and I walk towards the front door, preparing myself for another useless argument. I walk in and head to the kitchen, and thankfully, she was upstairs in her room. Her room is located right above the kitchen, and I can hear clear as day a conversation she is having on the phone. Who was she talking about? You guessed. Me. She is calling me every name in the book, talking down on character, and say downright evil things. At his point, I chose to call my mom to calm me down and tell her about the volatile situation we are having. I needed to talk to her about it in hopes that this argument can be done. As I am talking to my mom, I hear her notice I am home, and then she directly starts screaming at me to get the F out, you bitch. You stupid, nasty wara. I was taken back at the disgusting things she was saying. She has a very distinct voice that was just piercing through the walls. I snapped. I started screaming back. We are yelling through the ceiling, and my mum is hearing me scream with rage over the phone. She is hearing me go back and forth with her. My mum yells at me to stop. So I do. The next words she said is what put me into a terror. She quietly and slowly tells me, "Your sister is right next to me. She is with me right now at the house. Who are you yelling at?" And that is when I learned about mimic spirits. An evil spirit was mimicking my sister to enrage and feed off the energy. Pray up and be aware. Hi. When my kids were 4 and 9, we moved into a house that was haunted. I could feel the negative energy everywhere in that house, but mostly in my kids' room. Once, right at 4 a.m., my 9-year-old son shook me awake and was just standing there, crying and shaking. It took me about 10 minutes to tell me what was wrong. When he finally told me what was wrong, what he told me scared me to death. He said that while he was sleeping, he woke up because he felt his comforter at his feet being pulled up and down, and when he looked, the comforter ripped off of him and flew across the room. I had him get into bed with me for the night, but after that night, this ghost tormented and scared my kids every day and night. My kids were able to see, hear, and feel him. It turns out that it was an old man. He literally pushed my 4-year-old off of the top bunk of the bed. These occurrences happened every day. It was terrifying because there was nothing I could do to protect them. Every day when they went to school and I was home alone, I would close their bedroom door and put on music so I wouldn't hear noises, as this ghost liked to walk around and move things. One day, while the kids were at school with their bedroom door closed and the music on, I went outside for 2 minutes. And when I came back in, the music was shut off. and their bedroom door was open. No one had been in there besides me. One day, my son, who was 4, was in the shower, and he started screaming. So of course I ran in there, and he was crouched down, crying and staring at something. One night, he was crying in bed, before everything had really started. And when I went in and asked him what was wrong, he said he didn't want to share his bed with anyone. I told him there was no one else in his bed, and he pointed and said, "There's a man right there." One day, only my other son, who was 9, and I were home, and I saw the curtains being pulled back and forth in my kid's bedroom. So I went in to tell my son to stop playing with the curtains, but he was sitting across the room, watching TV. One night, I went grocery shopping, and when I got back, no one was home, as my ex-husband had taken the kids out. Well, I pulled right up in front of my house, and a really bright light was flashing inside the living room. I just thought someone left the TV on. When I opened the door, the lights stopped, and it was pitch black dark in there. Nothing was on. My kids went to the bathroom with the bathroom door open for years, even after moving, because this old man would flush the toilet all the time while they were using it. We had the taps team come out and do an investigation, and to try to get some advice on how to get this old man to leave, and they did catch some EVPs of him talking back to them. He even said, "I'm dead." They unfortunately couldn't catch anything on video, because both of their video cameras went dead, and the batteries from them immediately drained, even though they had charged both cameras fully before coming. I never was able to get this man to leave, but we did move, and luckily, he didn't follow us. I didn't know that spirits knew they were dead until that EVP. We have to move to get away from this man. This story is from around 2007 to 2008. In 2005, I moved into an old house in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The house was in the middle of the town, on what appeared to be a plot of land that the elderly owner refused to sell. There were businesses all around us. The benefit was that I rarely needed to drive anywhere. I had restaurants, bars, grocery stores, and even a movie theater within walking distance. The house was a small 2-bed, 1-bath that couldn't have been 1,000 square feet. It had an old stone wall and a damp basement with a well water tank. I thought it was odd considering we're in the middle of the city and city water would be easily accessible. Anyway, the house was very small and old. Sometime after moving in, we invited some good friends to become roommates. In total, there were 4 people living in this home, which were 2 couples. It was a great time. I was in my lower 20s, and we had parties from time to time. I'm not sure how long it took me to notice, but I wasn't the first person to point it out to the group. I and others started to notice and talk more frequently about the shadow people that would dart around the house. We'd even see them outside. Our house was surrounded by trees in all directions. We were cut off from the city that surrounded us by those trees. It was great, but made for a creepy scene at night. First, it was the shadow people. Many times when I was alone in the house, I'd be at my computer playing loud music and playing video games. I'd often hear whispering and see shadows in my peripheral. I could turn the music off and the voices would stop. I'd say out loud, "I can hear and see you. Please leave me alone. I'm just trying to enjoy my night." I could turn back on the music and hear the faint whispering again. At night, I would always feel eyes just staring at me. It was especially strong when I was alone. One of my roommates suggested a Ouija board, but I strongly protested. My mom got one when I was around 12, and it did not go well, so I am scared of them 100%. It was around this time that I decided to pursue whatever this feeling was, I thought, if I can feel it this often, then it has to be real in some sort of way. I started reading books about ghosts and people who call themselves mediums. I started meditating and opening myself up to that world. Was this a good idea? Probably not, but it led down a path that had a very surprising ending. During this time, unknown to me, one of my roommates was doing the same thing. The girlfriend of my friend started trying to communicate with whatever was in the house. Probably a bad idea too. I know. In my own meditations, I came to the conclusion that there were two main presences: a little girl and a tall man in dark, well-fitted clothes. Neither felt bad or evil in any way. The man felt protective of the girl. I thought that there was a chance that I was just being dumb and going crazy. While meditating, I asked for validation. If I'm dumb, then nothing would happen, right? I put out a request to the void, so to speak. Well, this was around Christmas. I had a party at work. They rented out an entire restaurant and had an open bar. I got a ride with a co-worker who was a good friend of ours and knew about our ghosts too. She briefly lived at the house prior to our current roommates moving in. So, where I worked was a non-conventional job. I worked at a place that sold adult movies online. They didn't make them, but are well known for being a major retailer and even won awards for the industry. Very often, celebrities from the movie world would come to our parties. Well, after several drinks, my co-worker decided to lead me up to one of them and introduce me. She had a dark sense of humor and wanted me to make a fool of myself to a pretty girl. Well, it freaking backfired in the oddest way possible. This woman looked me dead in the face as though she knew who I was, or we'd met before. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your friend will be okay." My blood chilled to the bone. How the hell could she know his name? "The little girl in your house needs to pass on." Ice filled my body. She mentioned a third thing that I cannot recall. Afterwards, we talked for about 30 minutes. She explained that she was also exploring the supernatural, and we connected because we both share the same astrological sign of Sagittarius. She showed me a Sagittarius tattoo on her ankle. She was very nice, and I even met her again at next year's party. I know her stage name, but I will not share it here. Now, back to what she said. I had no idea what she could have meant by the first thing. My roommate is fine. Well, that night I went home a bit drunk, got a ride home, and passed out. I was awoken at 3 a.m. to my girlfriend and a cop standing in my bedroom doorway. I was urged to go to the living room and sit down on a chair. 10 to 15 cops were searching the entire house. I had no idea what was going on. I was still quite drunk. My roommate had been busted with drugs in a sting operation. That night, he'd gone across state lines to get a large supply of a certain type of drug and was busted. They were waiting for him in our driveway. Long story short, he was never convicted or anything afterward. In other words, he was fine. Months later, I told him about what the adult film star told me, and he insisted that I put him in contact with her, but I refused. Now, the little girl is something of a longer story, but basically, we got a medium involved to help her pass on. After that, all activity stopped. The air in the house felt lighter and free. We never noticed how heavy the atmosphere felt in the house until it was gone. I put out the request and received verification that there is indeed something out there. After all was resolved, I cut all ties with the other side. I feel as though I have dealt with it enough. I know how it feels to step over the boundary and will take that stride when it's my time. Sorry this was so long, but the coincidences in this story led me to believe that there is, in fact, a lot more to this world than we can see. This is a story about my best friend ever. His name was Carlton. He was 26 years my senior, a war prisoner, a dark black man, and my best friend ever. When he turned 59, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. After that, I spent every weekend staying with him and his family, helping out where I could. Carlton made me promise a few things during that time. All I can say is to be careful, making promises to someone on their deathbed. He didn't want to die in a bed, so his wife would make the big couch up. I would make a bivouac on the floor and sleep there. One night, he wanted to say prayers. I helped him to his knees and leaned him against the couch. I knelt next to him, and we started to say our prayers. I looked at him, and he was glowing gold. Carlton was a dark-skinned black man. He used to say God made him well done, but at that moment, he was gold and shining as if he were a lamp. I touched his arm and felt like an electric shock, a download of information and visions at a warp speed, snatches of things to come. He smiled at me as if he knew. Later that night, he passed quietly. Broke my heart. A few months later, I was in Boulder, Colorado, driving at night during a crazy blizzard. The flakes were hypnotic in the headlights, and it was hard to drive. All of a sudden, he was sitting next to me in the passenger seat, dressed in a three-piece pinstriped suit. Clean as may be. He looked at me and said, "Slow down, Junior." It shocked me, and I started to brake. I came up to a car sideways, lights off in the road. If I had not slowed down, I would have center-punched the car and probably killed the driver. That was event one. As I said, I made promises, and one of them was to be his eyes and witness his children graduate college. His kids were graduating in the summer, and I attended both. It was heartwarming to fulfill that promise and to be a witness. It wasn't till his daughter was going to be married that I saw him again. He made me promise to walk her down the aisle and scare the hell out of her soon-to-be husband. You know, a dad's job. For some reason, I was not going to be able to be there. Then he appeared next to me as I was driving to work, again dressed sharp, but I first smelled him. Aqua Velva ice blue filled the air, and there he was, clicking his tongue and shaking his finger at me, and scolded, "A promise is a promise, Junior." Now, it's one thing to see a ghost or spirit, but to get scolded by one is another thing. After avoiding crashing and getting to work, I made sure that I had plane tickets and called her and let her know I would be there. I did attend her wedding and was blessed by walking her down the aisle. He would have been so proud of her. As we did the walk, the lights in the church flickered until I handed her to her husband. Oh, and yes, I stand 6 feet 5 inches, 275 pounds, and I did instruct the groom, advising him to behave, treat her like a queen, and never, ever lay a wrong hand to her. I think he got the message. I prefer to stay in hotels and neighborhoods with lots of local character because I like to be fully immersed in the personality of a city. I've stayed in dozens of historic hotels across Europe and the US, many of which claim to be haunted. While all were beautiful and some were creepy, I never saw anything truly weird until a few months ago. In November of 2024, my girlfriend and I traveled from the US to London, England. We decided to stay in Soho due to its central location and unique character. After nearly settling on Mimi's hotel, I stumbled upon a lesser-known place just down the street called Hazlitt's. As soon as I saw the photos of the rooms, I knew we'd be staying there. We checked in at 3 p.m. on a weekday. There wasn't a whole lot of activity in the lobby, so we were probably one of the only guests in the hotel at that time. Our overnight flight had taken 8 hours, so to recharge and adjust to the time change, we decided to nap for a few hours before going out to the pubs. Our room key simply said, Sir William Ross. We walked up an old Georgian staircase until we found a door with the same name. The lock clanked, the door creaked, and the floor squeaked as we stepped into a small Gothic vestibule, through another old door, and then into a fully wood-paneled room where centuries of paint covered moldings in thick globs. The weak autumn sun, obscured by clouds and heavy silk, failed to adequately light the room, so I switched on a lamp. The bedroom was cramped, but well appointed with various antiques. Above our fireplace was an unsettling painting of a frowning old man. My girlfriend undressed and immediately climbed into the heavy oak bed, where she seemed to fall asleep almost instantly. I lingered in the bathroom, brushing my teeth and admiring the historic details. I glanced into the silent bedroom where something caught my eye. The next few moments lasted probably only a few seconds. At first, I thought I was looking at another oil portrait, one I hadn't initially noticed, but then I realized it didn't have a frame nor canvas. It was a man, maybe in his 30s, standing near the corner of our bed, looking down at my sleeping girlfriend. He had parted and wavy brown hair of medium length and wore a dark jacket with large lapels. His face didn't suggest anger nor malice, but a neutral observation or perhaps mild curiosity, as though he just walked into the room and didn't expect to see someone sleeping there. The door to our room was locked, so I assumed a hotel worker had entered, and I was about to tell him this room is occupied, but then I realized it would have been impossible for him to have entered our room in absolute silence. That's when I noticed his clothes and hairstyle again. The reason I initially mistook him for a painting was because he looked like a character from a Jane Austen movie, but dressed simply and more somberly. My brain started to connect the dots. So there's a guy I've never seen before in our room who looks like he's from another century, who somehow entered without making even the slightest sound, even though this old hotel is creaky as hell. In a quiet panic, I felt a surge of adrenaline. It can't be. Holy shit, that's a ghost. I was in total disbelief and caught off guard. I had always heard stories of hotel ghosts appearing in the middle of the night, but not in the afternoon, nor visiting almost as soon as you've checked in. He wasn't transparent, nor floating, nor glowing, nor a mist. It just looked like some guy was in our room. He didn't say anything, and I never saw him look at me, only at my girlfriend. Still, standing only 15 feet away, with only an open doorway between us, I felt an intense sense of vulnerability, like there was an invisible spotlight on me. Now, growing up, my parents have only ever lived in old houses, so this wasn't my first weird experience, although it was my first one in probably a decade. I don't like to give these kinds of things attention, as I think it encourages them to interact with you even more. So I pretended like I didn't see him and turned back to the sink. Still brushing, I ran the water and began to unnecessarily and clumsily jostle our toiletries around, trying to make some noise. I rinsed my mouth and turned back to the bedroom. He was gone. I stepped back into the bedroom with an intense feeling of being watched. There was nowhere a grown man could have hidden. I was obviously spooked, but slid into bed and told myself that I was just tired from the long flight and seeing things. Despite my unease, I fell asleep, and the rest of our trip was amazing. I even proposed and got engaged, but that's another story. Now, some may question my response, but what was I supposed to do? Scream and throw my toothbrush at him, which would have woken up my girlfriend and made me look crazy? jump through a window and become a ghost myself, run out of the hotel half naked and be laughed at by staff. The room was already paid for, and it was going to be difficult finding a similar place in central London without taking out a mortgage. The best solution was just to ignore it and hope it left us alone. According to law, the hotel is supposedly haunted by the ghost of William Hazlitt, a writer who died in the building and who the hotel is named for. I found a portrait of Hazlitt, but to be honest, I don't think he looked much like the person I saw, although, I suppose, it could have been him. The rooms are named after his friends, which explains the name on the key, but other than that, I don't know anything else about William Ross. I didn't tell my girlfriend my story until we were on our flight back to the States. She breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you for not telling me while we were still there. She said she didn't see or feel anything weird, and I hadn't during the rest of our stay either. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't wake up each night in that room, glancing into the shadows, wondering if he'd returned. I have no explanation for the event. Before I tell you my story, I'm going to give you some context about my drive home from work, the state I live in and such. This happened about 10 minutes after I left work today, July 4th, 2020. I live in Northeast Ohio, and I got a new job about 2 months ago as a process technician at a dairy plant. It pays perfect money, considering it's a 34 or 35 mile drive one way. After about 20 or 25 miles, I drive through a wooded area. Nothing uncommon for me, as where I live in Northeast Ohio, forests are common, and I pretty much lived in the one behind my grandma's house growing up. I work 4 p.m. to 4 a.m., and the drive home sucks. Whether it's being tired, hungry, or the fog almost every night, I go the same way every day and night. I was driving my way home. I just left the residential area of my workplace and was going through the forested area. As I said, there's almost fog every night, so I'm on high alert for deer, raccoons, and such critters. It's just like every other drive home so far. I have a podcast on, focusing on the road, thinking of getting either a sausage McMuffin or McGriddle from McDonald's, and sometimes looking off to the side of the road for any eyes reflecting off my headlights. All of a sudden, I saw some reflecting eyes. Out of the woods comes a coyote. In my hometown, coyotes aren't too rare. I've seen them by my high school, but had never seen one outside of my hometown, so it surprised me. I start slowing down as it crosses the road, until it turns to my car and sits in the road. It sat about 10 feet from my car. There had been no cars I had seen since leaving the residential area, so I was going to go around it. But I thought this was too odd of a thing to happen, to just drive away from it. I expected it to just get up and walk away at any given second. This is where I began to get very scared. I honked my horn, and after about 2 or 3 seconds, it smiles at me. I have my brights on, so I can see it perfectly. This coyote had human-shaped teeth. My heart dropped, and every hair on my body raised, just as it is now recalling this incident. It lasted about 1 second before sitting up and running into the woods. I sat there in fear for about 5 seconds before shoving my foot on the pedal and driving at getaway speed. I didn't stop and get food because I had, and still have, no appetite. I thought the rest of the ride home what I saw, once doubting I saw it, but like I said, when my brights on, and it as close to my car as it was, I saw it as clear as day. This coyote had human teeth, and there was no doubt about it. I'm very into the paranormal, and that includes cryptids. Is it possible I ran into a skinwalker or some genetically mutated coyote? I am Native American, if that counts for anything. It's so weird typing this out. but I'd like someone who knew more about these things to help out if they can. I know one thing though, and that's I'm finding a new way to work. Please show your support by subscribe to our YouTube channel and like the video. This really helps us a lot. I upload daily horror stories, so make sure to press the bell icon